بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Surah al-Shams. I've seen this one. It's been here for a while. I don't know if anybody wrote it. Somebody wrote it. I don't know if it's. Anybody need a Quran? بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So last week we did al-Duha, al-Nashrah, in the beginning of Iqra. And then we started al-Shams. So today, inshallah, the plan is to finish al-Shams and do Surah al-Layl, inshallah. By the sun and its brightness, or the bright light of the sun, by the moon, when it follows it. So because of the ha, we know that the Shams, the sun, is feminine in Arabic. And by the daytime, the 12 hours of daytime. So nahar plus layl equals yawm. Nahar is the 12 hours of daytime, layl is the 12 hours of nighttime, and the two of them together make yawm, 24 hours. When it glorifies it, you could say, or makes it look nice and majestic and beautiful. And by the night, when it covers it. We're going to see this word again, so it's good to remember. And by the sky, what's this word? Wama? What? And what? By the sky and what built it? What does this mean? It should be by the sky and who built it, because Allah built the sky. He's not a what. Allah is not a what, right? What does this mean? By the sky and what built it? It says, what an amazing creator he is. Think of how amazing Allah must be that he created the sky or built the sky. So ma, or what, refers to the qualities of Allah. Huh? By the earth, same thing. And what, you could say, landscaped it. That's the word I use. Probably the translations have a different word. Made it wide and vast and flat. By the earth and what landscaped it. Meaning, what an amazing designer he is. That he made the earth like this. All the landscapes of the earth. Amazing. So the ma refers to how amazing he is compared to how amazing his creation is. Azza wa Jalla. And then we got to وَنَفْسٍ. So this is the place in the Quran where Allah swears the most. You have all these things Allah swears by in creation. Allah swears by them and how amazing they are. جَلَّاهَا. Look at the beautiful light of the sun throughout the day. And look at how amazing Allah is that He created the sky like this and the earth like this. So the more Allah swears, when Allah swears, that means that there's something very important He wants to say. And when he swears more, that means that thing is even more important. وَنَفْسٍ, and by, this is not by the soul, because of the tanween, it's by a soul. And so Allah is using this to show that there are so many different kinds of souls. Like the same way that human beings have different languages and skin tone and heights and physical build and capacities or abilities. And then if you look throughout history, there have been so many different, growth of civilization. The same way with the soul, that humans are very diverse. The souls of humans are just as diverse as the bodies of humans. By any soul, and you have the same what. What an amazing creator. The same what to show how amazing it is, that Allah balanced the soul, balanced it. What does Allah mean? He's about to clarify in the next ayah. فَأَلْهَمَهَا. Ilham is a kind of inspiration. It's not wahi. Wahi is more like, it's inspiration also, but it's more like revelation. Ilham is inspiration. Wahi is the kind of revelation that really only special beings get wahi. So, أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَىٰ أُمِّ Musa, the mother of Musa. She's preparing the baby to become a prophet, alayhi salam. So Allah gives wahi to his mother. أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَى النَّحْلِ. Allah that gives wahi to the bee to make the honey. So wahi is more special. Ilham is for anybody. Anybody can get ilham. So we make the dua. There's a very famous dua, very short one. It's good to know. Allahumma qini sharra nafsi wa alhimni rushdi. Ya Allah, protect me from any evil within myself and give ilham, give me this word, rushdi, the right choice, the right guidance, the right way to follow. Give me the inspiration of the right things to do. So Allah balanced the soul, and then alhamaha, He gave it this ilham, gave it this kind of inspiration. Fujuraha wa taqwaha. And it's interesting that fujur comes first. So last week we said taqwa here is the opposite of fujur. In the next surah, taqwa is the opposite of istighna or istaghna. What does fujur mean? We know what taqwa means. There's so many translations. Being aware of Allah, righteous, pious, being mindful of Allah, realizing how amazing Allah is, realizing that He's always watching. That's all taqwa. Now here taqwa is the opposite of fujur. What's other words that come from the same letters as fujur? Fajr. And fajr is the break of dawn, the daybreak. Another word that comes from fujur is a person who has fujur. It's called fajr in Surah Nuh. لا يلدوا إلا فاجرا كفارا. What's the plural of fajr? Fujur is the concept. The plural of fajr is fujjar. Yes, you have fajirin, but that word doesn't come in the Quran, even though technically it would work. Kafirin, kuffar. Two ways of saying kafir in the plural. So fajirin doesn't come in the Quran. Fujjar. And then you have another version in Surah Abasa. It's like a single one time. This version is al-kafaratul fajra. Kafara is also like kuffar, and fajra is also like fujjar. So these are the same words. And another word that we're going to see soon in another surah is al-biharu fujjirat. What's al-bihar? Anybody know? Bahar, yeah, plural of bahar. Oceans. So fajr is the daybreak. Then there's people who have fujur and they're called fujjar and they're associated with kuffar, kafaratul fajra, right? Inna al-fujjara lafi jahim, hellfire. So these must be bad people. So this is the opposite of taqwa. But now the same word is used for fajr, daybreak, and the same word is used for the oceans on the day of judgment, fujjirat. Interesting. So the concept, the root of this word ra is bursting. So for the fajr, it's the first burst of light, as if the night is a cover on the horizon, and then when the light breaks, and I heard if it's complete dark and it's completely flat horizon, especially on the ocean, when the first light comes, you actually feel like it's bursting. It makes a line on the horizon. So and you if you're in the dark, complete dark, and somebody lifts, like, I don't know, you're in some kind of a tent or something, and somebody lifts just a little bit, and it's, bright light outside, it feels like the light is bursting through. So that's the concept. Fajr is bursting through. And so what happens to the oceans on the Day of Judgment that relates to bursting? Some translations will say the oceans explode, but others will say boil. The oceans boil. So what does it mean for a person, for a human being, to have this quality of fujur? Taqwa is to be mindful of Allah. Be aware that Allah is watching. And therefore to try your best to be a good person, pious, righteous. So what's the opposite of that? Careless about the fact that Allah is watching. And when somebody doesn't think Allah is watching, that's it, you can do whatever you want. What's the hadith? If you don't have taqwa, go ahead and do whatever you want, or something like this. I don't remember the exact wording, right? So this is the opposite of taqwa in that sense. A person who doesn't have taqwa, whatever they desire, they're just going to go ahead and do it.
Fasaq fujur had to go in the same.
Say it again?
Fasaq or fujur.
Fasaq.
Yeah.
And fujur.
Yeah. Starting with fasik.
Fasiq. Yeah. So corrupt.
Yeah.
And fujur is it's also corrupt. It's corrupt in the sense that impulsive, bursting in terms of behavior, impulsive behavior. So the teenager is on the computer game, and then if Isha comes, we have time. And then midnight comes, and they're still in the game, and they just want to finish and finish. So that's impulsive, bursting behavior of just doing whatever. And then all the major sins, they relate to that kind of attitude. Carelessness, complete carelessness. So if you look at the translation, they'll say, mindful of Allah, and then careless of Allah. Careless of consequences. The word consequences comes at the end of the surah. So it's correct to translate taqwa as mindful, not just of Allah, mindful of consequences. So even for people who are not Muslims and don't believe in Allah, there's this concept of fujur and taqwa. Like, fujur is when you're driving and you don't think there's any police anywhere. So it doesn't matter if you run the red light. Or it doesn't matter if you're speeding. And then the moment the lights turn on the rear of your mirror, that's a moment of taqwa. The fujur leaves and taqwa comes in, right? So being mindful that there are consequences versus not realizing that there might be consequences. SubhanAllah. So Allah put these two things, Allah inspired these two things inside the soul. By design, every soul will have both of these. Which one did Allah start with? The carelessness. I mean, honestly. Unless you see a cop car, you don't think that anybody's going to find out that you're saying, right? The default is fujur. The default is that there's no consequences for what I do, because most of the times there's no consequences. If you think about consequences like a disease, somebody falling sick, or a broken arm, or a broken foot, or a broken something, or a loss like a flat tire or something. These types of sufferings or punishment that happen in the dunya, what are they all? They're all a reminder that Allah is there, that there are consequences for what you do. And nothing happens except by the will of Allah. And every evil that happens on earth is because of what human beings do. So that's there, but what percentage of a person's lifetime do they go through these types of calamities? It's a smaller percentage. The default is they don't realize that by default, a human being, unless they have faith, unless they have iman, unless they work on their own taqwa, the default is going to be, they're going to do whatever they want. They're not going to feel like there's any consequences. What's the phrase they use when seeing, no, not seeing is believing. There's a phrase for when you see it, you know it's there. When you don't see it, it's like it's not there. Out of sight, out of mind. Out of sight, out of mind. So the fact that there's accountability or consequences for what you do, if you don't see anything holding you accountable, then your mind doesn't think that you're going to be held accountable. So the default is fujur, and that's why the word fujur comes first. So then Allah says, the whole reason for all this swearing, which is the most you have in the whole Quran, is that guaranteed success. Men, anybody know men? Min is from. Men is like ma. Ma is what? Man is who.
And from?
Man is who. Who. Min is from. Man
Min.
is who. So, oh, you have the booklet, mashallah. So in the booklet, you have that reference card. Yes, all those small words, the min and the man and the ma and the ida, and all these small words are in the reference card. So man, who? Guaranteed success, whoever zakkaha. Zakkah is the word, the Islamic studies word called tazkiyah. Oh, turn on the pen. Bismillah. Bismillah. Tazkiyah. Tazkiyat al-nafs. So zakah, when you give zakah, they translate it as charity. But how does that have to do with tazkiyah? What is tazkiyah? Purification of the soul.
Yeah.
So what is zakah? Purification of the wealth.
Purify the wealth, yes.
Purifying the wealth. And that's why, I don't know if this is a hadith or a statement of the scholars, zakah is the filth of people. Meaning, don't take zakah. Never dare take zakah. Only beggars deserve to get zakah. Only people who are really destitute should get zakah. Zakah is the filth of people. Zakah is the part of your wealth that a person gives away to what? To purify your wealth. So in that sense, zakah is the filthy part that was given to purify the rest of your wealth. So tazkiyah is to purify. The translation that, what's his name? Jeffrey Lang. You know Jeffrey Lang? Mathematician, professor, converted to Islam and wrote a few books. The Angels Ask, I think. He has a very interesting take on, not interesting take, he read a few tafsir and understood something that he was always wondering about before becoming Muslim. And the Quran gives the answer to that question regarding the angels and everything. Anyways, Jeffrey Lang adopted the translation, I don't remember which translation, but one of the translations says, grow for tazkiyah. Growing into a beautiful flower or growing into a beautiful soul or person or personality. So tazkiyat al-nafs is not just purify your soul, it's to grow your soul into a beautiful, pure being. And the way the grammar works here, we're going to do a bunch more of these in the surahs coming up. Man zakkaha, that whole thing, that phrase, man zakkaha, whoever purifies it, whoever purifies his soul. That phrase is the subject of قَدْ أَفْلَحَ. And this arrow, we've seen this arrow a few times. What does the arrow represent? Let me help you refresh your memory on this arrow here. Using surahs that have the arrow. One of them here, only one is not good. One of them. Two. So let's look at this. There's a bunch of arrows. I'm not talking about this swap. This is a swap of words in translation. I'm talking about the arrow over there and the arrow down here. يكون الناس تكون الجبال ألهاكم التكاثر. What does this arrow indicate? The subject. So nas is the one doing yakunu. People will be. Jibal is the one doing takunu. Mountains will be. Here takathur is the one doing alha. Takathur distracted you. So it's the subject of distracted. This is very important to know because there's some places in the Quran where the subject is far away from the verb. Like over here. وَامْرَأَتُهُ, she will also tasla or yasla naran. So the arrow like this is the subject of the verb. Some places it's on the next line. Or sometimes even the next ayah is the subject of the word. SubhanAllah. So just a refresher. Every single time I put this arrow so far, it was always coming from a dhamma inside a bubble. Like you had here, dhamma inside a bubble. Ma'luhu, dhamma inside a bubble. Every single arrow like this, every subject had an ending dhamma that I bubbled. But now for the first time, going back to Surah al-Shams. For the first time now, the subject does not have a u sound at the end. And that's not because it's different. It's just the word men. The word men is just men. There's no manu, mani, mana. There's no ending haraka for the word men. It's just men. So if the word men could have a dhamma at the end, it would. Yes. So man zakkaha, whoever purifies it, if you were to substitute that phrase with the purifier of his soul, that word purifier, al-muzakkiyu would have a dhamma at the end and it would be the same. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. Whoever purifies it is the one who will guaranteed or is guaranteed to succeed. Who will succeed? Guaranteed. By the way, al-falah, aflaha comes from falah. And where do we hear falah every day? Adhan. Yes. Hayya ala salah, hayya ala al-falah. So qad aflaha means Allah is guaranteeing success to the people who take care of growing their soul into a beautiful, pure soul. What's the phrase for Ibrahim? Atallaha biqalbin salim, a pure heart, a sound heart. So you have to come to Allah with a pure heart. So any person who does that effort in this dunya is guaranteed success. وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. So this is the same phrase. مَنْ دَسَّاهَا is the subject of وَقَدْ خَابَ. All of these are gray words, so you can just take a guess based on what we just read. Guaranteed success. Whoever purifies his soul, whoever purifies it is guaranteed success. What do you think the flip side is? Whoever corrupts it, whoever messes it up, whoever makes it dirty and filthy, then guaranteed failure. Yeah. I don't know if the word khaba comes anywhere else in the Quran. Yeah, kha'ibin. فانقلبوا خائبين. I think خائبين comes a few times. خائبين is the opposite of مفلحين. خائنين is different. Yeah, that's what's it called? Betrayers or خائنين, deceivers. Somebody who's betrays you is a kha'in. So that was the main thrust of the surah. Allah swears by all these things to tell you guaranteed success for the person who purifies his soul. And if you don't, if you let it be messed up, then you're going to fail. And then Allah gives the example of Thamud. And this is interesting, that Allah brings the example of Thamud. Thamud, of all the different people that we know about, are the first people, so to speak. If you go to the Quran from the back, short surahs, when kids learn the Quran, the first nation they encounter is Thamud, by themselves. It's not Ad and Thamud. Turn one page, you have Ad and Thamud and Fir'aun. But here, just Thamud. It's interesting. It might be that, historically speaking, there's gradual progress in the lineage of, or the line of prophets. Before Nuh alayhi salam, there was no shirk. There was messed up people, like for example, the son of Adam who killed his brother, right? So there was messed up people, but nobody associated partners with Allah for generations and generations. Nuh is the first success story of Iblis making people worship Allah, worship other than Allah. That's Nuh. Then in the lineage or in the line of stories in the Quran at least, maybe there was more prophets between Nuh and Hud, but in the Quran, Hud comes after Nuh, chronologically speaking. So Hud is the next story of destruction because people messed up. And in that story, there is no specific miracle that is mentioned. Like, what was the miracle of Prophet Hud alayhi salam? Anybody know the miracle of Prophet Hud? We don't know what the miracle of Prophet Hud was. We know every prophet came with miracles, but Allah doesn't mention anything about his miracle. Allah just mentions how they got destroyed. Thamud is the next one, chronologically speaking, but this one now, we know how they got destroyed and we know the miracle. So this is, chronologically speaking, the first nation for whom Allah tells us what their miracle was. So maybe that's the significance of this ayah, because they asked for a specific miracle, and Allah gave them a miracle that matched exactly the way they asked. What was the miracle of the people of Thamud?
Camel.
The Naqatullah coming up in the next couple of lines. The camel of Allah. Tafsir tells us huge camel, like triple, 10 times the size of a real camel, that came out of the rock, miraculously came out of the rock. An interesting feature that archaeologists found is that camels engraved on a rock was a thing, historically speaking. Like they found stones where there's a drawing of a camel engraved in the stone and statements of old, like Nabatean script and Aramaic and all these different scripts that says this camel is being dedicated to God, and whoever touches it will perish or something like this. So interesting that there is some historical evidence for something special with a camel and a rock. Now, non-Muslims will say, "Oh, the story of Thamud is just made up because Muhammad saw these stones with a camel on it, so he made up a story." That's what academics will say, non-Muslims will say. But our take on it is that because of how significant this story was, it became a thing. Like everybody remembered that camel that came out of the rock, so they started engraving camels on rock. Wallahu a'lam. So the story goes, كذبت ثمود ثمود كذبت. What did Thamud do? Where have we seen this word? كذبت. أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين. So يكذب denies. So remember I was telling you in the workshop, only write a few words. Just write the words that I write. And if you want to take notes on a separate notebook. Because this will prompt your thinking. Wait a second. There's a lot of words on this first line. What does denies mean? Or which one means deny? What does ara'ayta mean? So ara'ayta has a box. The box is there to prompt your thinking. Wait a second. Ara'ayta is box. That means there's another word like it somewhere. So where can we find the meaning of ara'ayta or ra'ayta? This is box also. Show off over here. But then you also have a box on tara. Surah al-Fil. Tara means you see. So all of this is to remind you of the concept here is to help you, to give you tools to be able to connect with the Quran without going deep into the grammar, making connections. So the notes that we took throughout are helping you make connections as you're reading the Quran. Inshallah. Back to Surah al-Shams. Thamud denied. Bi طغواها. What's bi? With. Okay. Where can we find طغوا? A word like طغوا. What are the root letters? طغي. Yes. But what's a surah on the left of Surah al-Shams, meaning after Surah al-Shams, that has a word like it? Yakhsha. No. طغى. طغو. طغو. What if you put a letter in front? What are the letters of Arabic that can oftentimes come in front of a word? Yeah. يطغى. تطغى. أطغى sometimes. But أطغى doesn't come. Actually, it does come. Yes, it does come in the Quran. So which one comes in surah nearby? إن الإنسان ليطغى. So what does ليطغى mean? Now we have to think. There's too many words on the side. What does ليطغى mean? Huh? Go down the wrong path. Yeah. Which word is it here? Rebels. Yes. There's also transgress. Transgress is another word they use. Yattaha. So this was here. Indeed, the human being keeps on rebelling, going down the wrong path, transgressing the limits or transgressing the ordained balance. Or what did the sister use? sister brought up a very good way to say it. Pre. One time in the class, one of the sisters brought this phrase to indicate the way in which Allah created the balance and order of the whole universe. Qadr. Anyways, so yataha is to transgress the order in which Allah created things. So what does this mean? Thamud denied with tawwa, ha. What does ha mean? Well, literally means her. Who's she? Who was she up here? Duhaha. Talaha. The sun. The sun was a she. In Arabic, everything is either he or she. There's no it. So what's the she here? Thamud. Yes. So it's interesting that groups of people, when you call them by the name, like Thamud is the name of a tribe, right? So you could say it, meaning the tribe. But throughout the Quran, Allah says hum or ha for a group of people that He names. And whenever there is praise or neutral statements, it'll be hum. Whenever Allah is upset or somebody looks down upon a group, it'll be it or she. It'll be the ha pronoun. So Fir'aun does this too. When he is about to be drowned in the ocean, he says, "Oh, now I believe in the God that Bani Israel believed in." And he uses the she pronoun for Bani Israel. He's still looking down on them. Subhanallah. So tawwaha, it could have been tawwahum, meaning Thamud, but Allah uses the it or the she pronoun. Thamud denied with its tawwa. What does that mean? Rebellion, with its rebellion. Transgression, with their transgression. The Thamud denied with their transgression. So this is one of the ayahs that show the nuances of the Quran. If you translate word by word, it doesn't make sense. كَذَّبَتْ ثَمُودُ بِطَغْوَاهَا is so loaded with meaning. It is by their transgression that Allah is accusing them of denying. Their transgression is what makes them, it's connected to them denying the message. Remember we talked about in Surah Al-Ma'un that corruption in society is always tied with denial that there is any accountability, denial that there is any day of judgment. So here Allah says every soul knows, every soul is pre-programmed to have both of these, being aware of consequences and being careless of consequences. And then Thamud, they denied consequences. They denied that there's any day of judgment. They denied the message. And that shows by their transgression, their tawwa. But then, also, actually this connects to bidam bihim. So we'll swing back to this once we get to bidam bihim, inshallah. إِذٍ بَعَثَ أَشْقَاهَا. So here goes another one, where you have a word without a dhamma. That's the subject of imba'atha. Ashqa, the word ashqa ends with an alif. So there's no ashqu, ashqi, ashqa. Ashqa doesn't change. Like Musa, the name Musa. You can't put u-a-i at the end of Musa. The harakat of Arabic, they don't work for these words. If the word ends with the alif, it's not going to change. So it can still be the subject, and ashqa is the subject. If ashqa could take a dhamma at the end, it would have a u sound at the end. And it's the subject of imba'atha. Anybody know yawm al-ba'ath? Day of judgment. But what does it literally mean? Resurrection. And then, what do you think this means? Ba'atha. Let's write rebel. Rebellion. 2 L's, rebellion? 1 L? Looks like it needs 2 L's, no? Rebellion. And then in ba'atha means rose. So resurrection is raising from the dead. Inba'atha is that ashqa rose. Well, wretched, wicked, yes. We're going to see this word again in Surah al-Shams. No, well, actually, shaqa. Yeah, shaqa is a form of hardship. Yeah, ashqa is a person who is wretched, miserable person, either because going through hardship, but then in this case is because they're so evil, so wicked that they're putting themselves through the hardship of this life and the next. Ashqa, the most wicked, the most wretched, the most miserable. So the most miserable the most miserable of them rose. Who is this? The most miserable of Thamud rose and did something. Surah Al-Naml tells us, how does it go? وَكَانَ فِي الْمَدِينَةِ تِسْعَةُ رَهْطٍ يُفْسِدُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا يُصْلِحُونَ. There were 9 rahd. You could translate as like gangsters or mercenaries or like bad guys, people that spread trouble and people are afraid of them. There were 9 bad guys. So most likely this ashqa, the most wicked of them, is not one person, is these 9 people. These 9 people in Surah Al-Naml, because this is the same story of Salih and Thamud in Surah Al-Naml. So these people, they rose. And even if it is 9 people, that doesn't change that Inba'atha is correct conjugation. فَقَالَ لَهُمْ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. And this part of the surah is another example of how Allah tells stories not like a book, more like a movie. We talked about this for Surah Al-Adiyat, remember? Like the beginning of Al-Adiyat is not to read like a book. It's to hear as if you're in the movie seeing the action scene. We said that the Al-Adiyat is like a script for an action scene. And I mentioned at that time how Surah Taha, if you read the story of Samiri in Surah Taha, it doesn't make sense. Unless you understand that it's written as if you were watching it like in a movie, where you have some flashbacks and somebody's mentioning and you have a voiceover and things like that. So this is another example of this. Like it's not written as if you're reading it in a linear fashion like the way people write stories. فَقَالَ لَهُمْ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. Another subject, رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. قَالَ لَهُمْ. The Messenger of Allah said to them. So who is this? Salih alayhi salam. Salih said to them, what did he say? We can put the quotes here. نَاقَةَ اللَّهِ وَسُقِيَاهَا. نَاقَةَ اللَّهِ. The camel, yes. The she camel, the female camel of Allah. وَسُقِيَا. Anybody went to Mecca? Hajj, Umrah? Yes? So you see these big plastic barrels they have by the truckload every single day from Mecca to Medina with Zamzam? What does it say on there? On those barrels, it says something. Suqya Zamzam.
Yes.
Suqya Zamzam. So this is the story.
Drinking.
Suqya.
Yeah,
Suqya doesn't just mean drink. What's the word for drink in Arabic? Sharab. Right? Sharab is when you drink. And Urdu took it for a different meaning. But sharab is the regular word for drinking. So I'm drinking is ashrabu. Suqya is when you're providing a drink. So Allah is the one who does saqa for people in Jannah. Allah doesn't drink. Allah provides drink to the people of Jannah. So suqiyaha meaning just like visualize those barrels in Medina that are all over the Masjid al-Nabi with the little faucet at the bottom of the barrel. It says suqiya Zamzam, the provided drink of Zamzam from Mecca. So here the Prophet is saying, Salih is saying, literally, she camel of Allah and its provided drink. Now this is Allah translating to us. Salih alayhi salam did not speak Arabic. Actually, maybe he spoke Arabic, but not the version of Arabic that the Quran is based on. And this is Allah telling us the story. So when you have a prophet speaking in the Quran, this doesn't mean literally like a tape recorder of what he exactly said. This is Allah giving us the gist of what He was telling them. So this is the most concise, in a nutshell, this is what Prophet Salih kept telling them about this camel. Wake up, people, this is the camel you were asking for. You kept telling me, if you're saying the truth, then make a camel come out of this rock. And you said, and it has to be a camel like this. And now you have this camel. This is the camel you asked for. It's the camel of Allah, meaning not that it belongs to Allah. Non-Muslims think that you worship this. Allah doesn't live in the Kaaba. It doesn't make sense, right? Baytullah doesn't mean the house of Allah where He lives. Camel of Allah doesn't mean He owns this camel. It means it's a miracle. It's the one Allah sent as a miracle to you that you were asking for. SubhanAllah. وَسُقْيَاهَا, and its drink is being provided. So other surahs will tell us more about the story. They were complaining that the camel is taking too much water. And Allah says, كُلُّ شِرْبٍ مُحْتَضَرٍ. How does it go? Surah Al-Qalam, how does it start? كُلُّ شِرْبٍ مُحْتَضَرٍ. Every drink is provided, meaning don't worry about running out of water. Allah is the one who brought this camel to you out of the rock, just like you were asking. So He's providing enough water for you to survive and for the camel to survive. وَنَبِّئْهُمْ أَنَّ الْمَاءَ قِسْمَةٌ بَيْنَهُمْ. Tell them, Salih, tell them that the water needs to be divided between you and them, meaning the camel and the people get to drink. Everybody gets to drink. So the camel became a problem because of water supplies, or they perceived it to be a problem because of water supplies. Yes. فَكَذَّبُوهُ فَعَقَرُوهَا. They denied Him and they killed it. عَقَرُوهُ. They cut the legs and then slaughtered it. It was too tall for them to slaughter it, so they had to cut the legs first. So look at the flow of the surah. Thamud denied with their rebellion, and it's still kind of vague what this means. When the most wicked of them stood up, then the Prophet said, this is the camel of Allah and its drink. Then they denied Him and killed it. But we know that Salih kept telling them that this is the camel, and eventually Ashqa, this group, stood up and slaughtered the camel. So the ayahs they feel like it's a little bit out of order as far as the sequence or the story goes. So this connects, you have to see the depth to connect it together. Let's read some more, inshallah, this ayah. فَكَذَّبُوهُ. They denied Him. كَذَّبُوا. If you look at page 5 of your booklet, كَذَّبُوا. كَذَّبَ. He denied. كَذَّبُوا. They denied. كَذَّبَتْ. She denied, or here, Thamud, the tribe, denied. عَقَرُوا. They killed it. They denied Him and they killed it. Or then they killed it.
What's that original word from
عَقَر. This word it only comes for the she camel in the Quran. There's no other aqar except for the she camel. So, al-Dhariyat. No, I don't think al-Dhariyat. Al-Qamar. Yeah?
Which page?
Which page? 5, yeah. You on page 5?
No, 5.
No, the card doesn't have 5, but the booklet has 5. So Nasara,
Oh.
he helped. Nasaru, they helped. Nasarat, she helped. So Kadhabu, they denied. Yes. They denied and they killed it by cutting the hamstrings or the legs. فَدَمْدَمَ عَلَيْهِمْ رَبُّهُمْ. Another subject, رَبُّهُمْ. I'm not going to draw the arrow because it goes all across the page. رَبُّهُمْ دَمْدَمَ. رَبُّهُمْ is the subject of دَمْدَمَ. Again, when there's a pronoun, the u that I bubbled is the u of the ending of Rabb, not the u of hum, because that's the pronoun. Rabbu. He's the one who damdama, pounded on them, destroyed them, pounded on them to destroy them. How did he pound on them? With a frozen wind that went through the walls. So different surahs will have different aspects of the same story. عليهم, on them. بذنبهم. ذنب, sin. ذنوب is the plural of ذنب, sin. It's also the word that means tail, like the tail of an animal. Them. What about be? Them bihim. With their sin. So Allah, figuratively speaking, Allah turned their sin into some kind of an object to pound on them with and destroy them with their own sin. So here, they denied with their rebellion. So the figurative language is that Allah is turning their rebellion into a thing which they used to deny the message. Like this was their tool of denial, their rebellion, their transgression, their wish to do whatever they want. Back to the beginning of the surah. The soul, by default, is designed to have this impulsiveness. Just do whatever. There's no consequences. So the figurative language is that Allah turns this taqwa into something that is the object or the tool of their denial. And then Allah turns their sin into the object or the tool of Him, damdama, boom, 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 until He destroyed them. And so if you pound on something for enough time, what happens? Sawaha. It became flat. So balance, sawa. I mentioned last week, sawa is the word that they use in Arabic for putting everything in the right place, putting everything in order. Or for like a kid to make their rooms tidy. Everything in the right place, nice and tidy. It's called sawa also. Allah sawa the creation of the human being. So we have 5 fingers on each hand. And there's the same length between, each side. And all these different things are sawa. And the eyes are in the perfect position so that you're able to see. And all these different things, sawa. Proper proportion, proper balance. But here, fasawaha, Allah made the whole place flat. So this is all figurative language. Another way to understand this sawa is that Allah made their punishment, balanced in the sense that it wasn't more than what they deserved. It was appropriate. It was measured appropriately, appropriate to their behavior, to their taqwa. فَسَوَّاهَا. So the ha seems to be referring to the place where Thamud lived, or the ha would refer to the punishment of Allah that He made balance. He didn't beat a dead horse. He didn't overkill. He didn't punish them over what they deserved. سَوَّاهَا. وَلَا يَخَافُ عُقْبَاهَا. And He does not fear. I should have asked you for this word. What's the word like it? Khawf. What surah? Quraysh. آمَنَهُمْ مِنْ خَوْفٍ. Khawf, fear. It's a word people usually remember easily. Uqbaha is the end consequence. Yes. وَلَا يَخَافُ عُقْبَاهَا. The most tafsir tells us this is Allah. Allah doesn't fear its end consequences. That's a big question that people have. Archaeologists have tried to find. There's a place in Saudi Arabia which is called al-Hijr. And Surah al-Hijr has mentions of things that scholars have always identified with the people of Thamud throughout history. But Surah al-Hijr, in the mention of Hijr, doesn't have there's nothing clear to say that this is Thamud. And then the place that is historically identified through the Muslim tradition as the place of Salih. There's hadith that when they went to Tabuk and they walked through, what is it called? Madain Salih, I think. They walked through there and the Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, something along the lines, don't stay here too long. This is the place where the people of Thamud got destroyed. So this is what our historical Muslim history tradition tells us the place of Thamud was. But archaeologists have identified that that place is way after the historical Thamud of the Quran. That place that was dug into the cliffs was all tombs. It's not the place they used to live. the town was in the middle, and they dug tombs into the rock. And this was part of some civilization that was, some centuries, maybe 10 centuries before the Prophet ﷺ, but it wasn't so far removed as the timing of Thamud that would have it. So it's still up for debate where Thamud actually was, and what does, historically, the historical aspect of this story is still, misunderstood or unknown, has some elements of unknown, and non-Muslim academics use this to attack the historicity of the Quran. Not because the Quran is off compared to what they found archaeologically, but because archaeological findings are off compared to the traditional Muslim narrative. This is an important distinction to make. There's no contradiction between archaeology and the Quran. The contradiction is between archaeology and the narrative that Muslims have carried over the centuries of these things, such as the Prophet going through, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, going through that place at the Ghazwat Tabuk and mentioning this. Just to put things into perspective, every single book of Islamic knowledge that we have was written at least 100 years after the Prophet. The Quran is the only one that was written very early on, and we have, like, if you go to the Sana'a in Yemen, they found some manuscripts, like carbon dated, that match what the Muslims say about the Quran, that the Quran was written. These manuscripts date back to the life of the Prophet ﷺ. So there's proof, there's archaeological proof that the Quran was written on parchment and things at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and then at the time of Uthman ibn Affan. And it confirms the story of the copies of the Quran. Archaeology confirms that. As for the rest of our Islamic tradition, such as the Prophet walking through the Mada'in Salih and making that mention, that's not in the Quran. That's in books of Islamic knowledge. Those books of Islamic knowledge, there is no archaeological evidence of anything. Like the first archaeological evidence you have is maybe 200 years after the Prophet. So like the Sirah Ibn Hisham. Ibn Hisham took from Ibn Ishaq. Or is it the other way around? I think Ibn Hisham took from Ibn Ishaq. We don't have the Sirah of Ibn Ishaq. We just have Ibn Hisham. And Ibn Hisham and other books keep mentioning Ibn Ishaq. But there is no manuscript was found of the Sirah of Ibn Ishaq. And Ibn Ishaq, I believe, was 150 or 200 years after the Prophet. He took from Urwa ibn Zubayr, who was born the year that the Prophet died, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Urwa ibn Zubayr took the Sirah from Aisha, his aunt, radiallahu anha. And he wrote it. So there's mention in Ibn Ishaq of the fact that somebody wrote. But we don't have Ibn Zubayr and we don't have Ibn Ishaq. We have only manuscripts that date back to Ibn Hisham. And even the Ibn Hisham, the original manuscript, is not complete. And that's the case for every Islamic sciences. So when archaeology comes and says, hey, this is, Muslims got it all wrong, it's not the Quran is wrong. It's that the traditional, books that we have that date back to 200, 300, 400 years after the Prophet, some mistakes came in. And that's proof that this is human and this is from Allah. There's going to be mistakes. If Allah had sent Bukhari as a messenger, then Sahih Bukhari would have no mistakes. But Bukhari was not a prophet. Radiallahu anhu. Right? So Sahih Bukhari is going to have some mistakes. He was a human being. SubhanAllah. That's why some scholars they have put a grading within Bukhari. Like the Sahih of Bukhari, there's a percentage of Sahihness, how authentic it is within Bukhari. So Bukhari we know is the most authentic, but still scholars grade within Bukhari, this is more authentic than this. SubhanAllah. Where was this coming from? وَلَا يَخَافُ. Oh, where was this place? So Allah does not fear end consequences. So when you have any authority passing a judgment and giving the sentence to whoever it was. Anybody went to court before? Yeah? When the judge passes the judgment, is everybody happy in the audience? No. Never. When a king passes a judgment on a group of people this, a group of people that, and so may Allah help the Muslims in England. When the president says something, is everybody happy in England about this situation and the riots and all these things, right? So whenever an authority acts their judgment, like in the court, this guy was found guilty for something, he goes to jail. Some people are going to be upset. Or this guy was found non-guilty and he doesn't get punished. Some people are going to be upset because of that, right? People might end up questioning the authority based on their dislike of the judgment, their dislike of the sentence that was implemented on that person. Yeah. So here, Allah says He's not that kind of authority that would make any mistake in His judgment. He has no fear. So if an authority does something wrong, then the subjects might, what's it called? Overthrow. Might overthrow the authority. Like you can have a coup and the president can be dismissed. Like they tried to do in Turkey, right? They tried to get rid of Erdogan some years ago, right? You might have, like, the subjects might revolt against the authority. Like, how dare he do this? When Trump was president, impeach Obama and then impeach Trump, right? There was these campaigns. So the subjects have means to criticize their authority and overthrow them. How dare you do this? You can't be our president. How dare you do this, right? So Allah is not that kind of authority. How dare you do what? Allah does whatever He wants. And there's nothing Allah does that He has to fear any consequences for doing it. Like Allah is the most wise. Allah is the most perfect of all judges who pass judgment and then implement the consequence of what their judgment was. Allah. So this is there to echo many places in the Quran. Inna Allah la yazlim. Allah does not cause any oppression. Allah does not cause wrong. Allah does not wrong anybody. Allah la yazlimun nasa shay'an. Walakin an-nas anfusahum yazlimun. So when people use the human measuring stick to find what is fair and not fair, what is right and wrong, if they use that measuring stick to judge Allah, they got it wrong. Allah la yazlimun nas. An-nas anfusahum yazlimun. Allah doesn't wrong. Only people should use a measuring stick to see how fair something is and not. But for Allah, you don't measure the fairness of Allah. Subhanallah. La yakhafu uqba. He doesn't fear any consequence. The she-camel of Allah and its provided drink. I didn't write anything. I should write this. Provided drink. Again, the dash is there to represent that provided drink is two words in English, but it's only one word in Arabic. Suqiyah. So, naqatullah, your question. This is a word that you want to remember by context. What is the surah talking about? It's talking about Thamud. What did the Prophet say? What was the miracle? It was the camel. So naqa is she-camel. One time I looked up in the English dictionary, like, what's the actual word for a she-camel in English? Anybody know? A cow. The official word for a she-camel is a cow. So that's not very helpful. That's why the translation always has she-camel. Alhamdulillah. 20 minutes. I think we should leave Surah al-Layl for next time. So. جزاكم الله خيرا. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.